approval of resolution number SNRHA 115 FY 2022 annual plan. Mr. Grassley.
Yes, Commissioners, I'd like to provide a little bit of context to this request, and this item is behind you, before you, and also some of the process that's behind it. I believe this goes back more than 20 years to the Housing Act of, I think it was of 1998, that required housing authorities to adopt an annual plan. This is part of the federal government's accountability oversight of housing authorities. It's also an intention of providing the public an opportunity to see what the housing authority's plans are for the coming year and what its financial capacity is and its administrative policies. So since roughly around 2000 or somewhere around that time, housing authorities have been required to do two things. One is annually adopt an annual plan, and the second thing is to adopt a 5-year plan on a cycle that really focuses more on capital improvements and that sort of activity, which does tend to get planned out over 5 years. So each year, the housing authorities has been adopting an annual plan. Last year it was adopted quite late. This year we're actually a little late, but we're probably only about a month late. And I'll take responsibility for that, because originally this was intended to be brought to the board at your July meeting. And I bumped it. I bumped it a month to allow more time. So let me give you a little bit of the history. We began by forming a resident advisory board, as we do each year. This year was a little bit constrained because we had a very short time frame that we needed to put it together. But the board approved the resident advisory board formation at its May 20th meeting. On the May 27th, we prepared and published a draft of this plan, of this annual plan. The Resident Advisory Board met twice. The first meeting was on June 21st when we began to discuss it with the Resident Advisory Board, and subsequently another meeting was held on July the 8th that provided an opportunity for the Resident Advisory Board to provide comments and to have further discussion. All comments due after it was published on the 27th of May were due by July the 13th. And there was a public hearing on that date, and we did have a few people appear at that public hearing and provide comments. The board meeting was on July 15th, and that was the original target to have this approved. But my feeling was that if we were receiving comments on the 13th, the packet for the board would have already been prepared. And there would have been no opportunity to publish for you to see and to consider the comments that came from the public, nor really for the staff. And I felt out of respect for the comments that we would be receiving, and also to provide opportunity for the staff to spend time and really give some thought to the comments, we needed to bump it. I discussed it with our representatives at HUD in San Francisco, and they agreed that having a little extra time and being late was not going to cause a problem for them, and they agreed to that. So it's been extended until today for you to consider. I do want to make clear that the content of this. This is an overall plan for our activities for the coming year. Included in your approval today would be amendments to the what is commonly referred to as the ACOP, or the Admissions and Continued Occupancy Policy of the Public Housing Program, and the Section 8 Administrative Plan. These are two principal policies that guide the departments that operate those programs throughout the year, and they are policies that guide decision making and how those programs operate. The kinds of changes that occur from year to year are often driven by changes in federal notices and federal regulations that we need then to make adjustments to make sure we're in compliance with those. And those are typically the kinds of things. Other things from time to time reflect changes in our operating procedures or how we want to do business. And I'll give you one example that was in fact changed because of comments from the public, and I'm glad we gave it that time. There's a charge for I believe I can't remember now whether it's for a late fee or a bounced check. And initially we had planned to charge at a rate that is in fact pretty much where the private market charges for the same thing. But one of the comments made was that we should lower it to $25. And so we are in fact lowering it. And we're lowering in recognition that our clients tend to have lower incomes, and we ought to recognize that by changing that. So we have had valuable input through this process. So what's before you today is a compilation of a lot of time a lot of thought given by a lot of people. And I will also comment that there were some suggestions made that we're still looking at. There were some suggestions made that we felt we could not implement at the beginning of the year and weren't ready to jump into to make changes. But we continue to look at some of these, and perhaps they'll be included in a later revision to the annual plan, because we can do that if that's needed, or they may be included in the plan next year. So that's, and also we're also providing a status report as a part of this plan on where we are in our 5-year plan. So that the things that were put in the 5-year plan that have to do with capital improvements and capital expenditures, there's an update that's included in the annual plan. So that's essentially what's in the plan, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Grassley. I will say that I fully support and appreciate you slowing the process down just a bit and adding that additional month time frame. I think there was great wisdom in that, and I'm glad that HUD in San Francisco saw that the same way. I know that last year, right, we were early days of the pandemic, and this kind of came up on us in a last-minute manner, and the process was not incredibly thorough. I know we've improved this year. My question would be to you, if we were to do it perfectly, what would be the ideal time next year to start this process so we can put it on the calendar?
Well, I would say you want to start it right after the holidays. So in January, you want to start planning. That doesn't mean that activities start occurring then that involve people, but the schedule should be put together, and everybody should know what the time frames are so that it's all done in time. I think that would be plenty of time.
Okay.
In fact, more than that time probably, but starting around the first of the year.
If we can include the team members that would oversee that calendar and those events, if we could queue them up to have that on their calendar, I think that would be great. So that way we can continue to improve this process and make sure that the engagement is as thorough and as meaningful as it possibly can. Any questions or comments for Mr. Grassley regarding the proposed annual plan? Mr. McCurdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Grassley, for your hard work. Can you speak to other information that you received as a part of the public commenting period to include, I guess, the recommendation for the $25 fee, so we can just have a little bit better understanding of how well the community engagement portion went and what we're looking forward to in the future.
Yes, well, there were two opportunities where we got comment, and I think we were getting comments from the same people in both opportunities. One was the RAB meeting, and then second was the public hearing. And while I was not at either one of those meetings, I think I might have been at the RAB meeting, I can't recall, but I was not at the public hearing. But my understanding is that they were virtually the same comments from a couple of people. And one of the comments was about lowering the fee and not charging that amount. And there was some discussion among the staff, because the feeling generally is, well, let's try to stay where the market is. Let's try to keep that about where other landlords are charging. And it was ultimately decided, no, let's lower it. Let's take this recommendation, and let's recognize that our clients often don't have the resources, and we ought to. The other, one other item that is open that we're still exploring is there are we use Rent Cafe for our rent coming in for the public housing program. Rent Cafe is a part of the Yardi suite of software services that we use. And we don't take cash. I don't know any housing authority that's taken cash for many, many years. So the rent has to be paid in some form that's electronic payment or a check or something that comes in. So we have several methods that allow us to receive rent from our tenants through Rent Cafe. One of those methods is for people that have bank accounts. They can have a direct payment from the bank account. Now there's I think it's a 95-cent fee, if I remember the report I got, that for that service, but it's not charged to the tenant. We absorb that cost. So the residents don't have any fee involved in that. Another method they can use is well, I won't name them because I'm not that familiar with it, but there's about 2 or 3 other methods that people can use where they can go make a payment for the rent through Rent Cafe that do involve charges where the tenants have to pay a small fee. And it'd be like going to someplace to get a money order, for example. In the old days, some residents, when housing authorities accepted payment in their offices, people would go get a money order, or they'd have a check, or they'd pay with cash. And money orders always have a fee. So these other methods have fees associated with them that we do not pay. They're paid by the resident. One of the suggestions is that we seek out a method that would allow people who don't have bank accounts, that we explore a method of receiving funds for people that don't have a bank account where there is no fee. And that's an area we wish to continue to explore. But we're not certain how much flexibility we have with our Rent Cafe program. So it's something that we could not hurriedly make a decision on, Mr. McCurdy, but it's one that we value the comment and the suggestion, and it's something we'll continue to take a look at. I hope that gives you some idea of what we're looking at.
Thank you for that. Just, one, I guess, suggestion as we, that's an issue if tenants don't have bank accounts. So maybe perhaps we have a conversation with the FSS department, if you will, and we identify who those families are and provide banking classes and financial literacy classes as a part of that work. And we can also, be followed up with that after those considerations are made. But thank you so much, Mr. Grassley.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board regarding the annual plan? Ms. Diaz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Grassley, on page 5-43, the minimums are raised from 35 to 50, and I just wanted to know who sets those rates? Is it us? Are we trying to, again, stay within market? Is it dictated by HUD? I just wanted to get a little bit of clarity as to the increase by $15 for minimum rent exemption.
I'm gonna have to find that in here to be sure that I'm talking about the right document.
So it's 5-43 on the bottom. At least that's how it's labeled, but it's right after 5-28, so that's really interesting.
Okay.
If that helps locate it.
Yeah, I found it. I want to find the beginning of this. This comes from the Housing Choice Voucher Program that's administered by our Housing Programs Department. And I am sorry, but I can't answer that question. I don't know if that came from a change in federal regulations or if that's an adjustment that our staff are recommending.
Okay. It's
Be
just
happy to-
helpful for us to understand it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take a look at it, and again, we can come back and talk about it.
That works. And then also, I love the change to the public housing objectives. I just wanted to say I like that we're putting the focus on our clients and on our residents. So I appreciate the language being changed there. And then overall, could you give us the overall broad strokes of our 5-year plan and what we're hoping to accomplish as an agency, so as folks that haven't read this thoroughly can understand where we're heading?
Well, I can briefly tell you because I'm not that familiar with the 5-year plan. The 5-year plan includes some of our goals for providing capital improvements, and I believe the 5-year plan was just submitted last year. So this would be, and Mr. Sanford could perhaps comment on how far, but I think this is just the first year we're reporting onto that 5-year plan from last year. But we're making investments through the capital fund. There's roof repairs and replacements going, well, essentially not repairs, but replacements that are undertaken. There's other improvements. There's stairs that are being replaced at several of our properties. These are exterior stairways that are metal pans with, I guess it's a concrete or concrete-like material. There's a number of projects dotting around through our various properties that are going on, and we're providing a report here. Probably one of our biggest aspects of this that's yet to be realized is our effort to, well, two efforts that you know very well about that are in the future. One is our application for a Choice Neighborhoods planning grant for Marble Manors, and the other is the repositioning of Jamestown Towers, which will be part of those. Those are both big parts of those are probably the biggest parts. Otherwise, we're continuing to make investments in our property through major repairs that are not part of routine that are funded from the capital fund. I hope that's sufficient.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? If there are no further comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion by Commissioner Craig and a second by Commissioner Cheryl Davis. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, that passes. Item number 11, approval of the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority operating budget for fiscal year ending September 30, 2022. Probably turn the time over to Mr. Herron.
Yes, please, Mr. Herron.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Today we're going to be presenting to you our proposal for the fiscal year 2022 budget starting in October 1. Back on August the 6th, an administrative committee was held to discuss the annual budget in detail. President was chair of the committee, Mr. Commissioner Shaw, Commissioner Black, Mr. Commissioner Craig, as well as Commissioner Davis, all attended the meeting. We discussed the budget in detail, and we also had a meeting this past Monday with the resident service pre-board meeting, where we also went over, excuse me, can I take this off? Where we also went over the proposed budget. This year, we are projected to have a net income of $358,000 compared to the $961,000 that was approved in the revised 21 budget. The biggest variance in that, as you can see, if you're looking at the assumption that was prepared, is in our Section 8 program, our Housing Choice Voucher Program. In our current fiscal year 2021, we were projecting an $806,000 net income compared to the $85,000 net income. Most of that was attributed to, as you may remember, we received some CARES funds in 2020 and 2021, about $1.2 million we received in the Section 8 program. That increased the amount of revenue received in this current fiscal year. We won't be receiving those funds, at least as of today. We haven't received information that we will receive any additional funds, CARES funds in the 2022 budget, which contribute to the decrease in funding for the Section 8 program. If you look at compared to the public housing and the central office cost center and the affordable housing program, from this year compared to what is projected for next year, it's pretty consistent in terms of what we're budgeted for a net income. Public housing, we're projecting a $38,000 net income compared to $39,000 in the 21 budget. The central office cost center, we're projecting a $162,000 net income compared to the $144,000 in the 21 budget. In the affordable housing program, we're projecting a $54,000 net income compared to the $39,000 net income in the 2021 budget. Some of the highlights, and I want to go over that as part of the 2022 budget, is we are projected, as I stated before, a $358,000 net income for the 2022 budget. A Section 8 program is projected a net income of $162. Most of it attributed to an adjustment to the projected proration of 80%. In the 2022 budget, we had a proration percentage of 82%, which is a little more conservative in the 2022 budget. Again, we will not be receiving, at least as of yet, any CARES funding, so that those dollars won't be projected in the upcoming budget. We also received, glad to say, we received 586 vouchers, emergency housing vouchers to assist the homeless, anybody who's fleeing from, or anybody who's maybe becoming homeless. This was part of our agency funding, which would generate about $2.8 million in funding and about a $300,000 additional admin fee for the Section 8 program. Our central office call center is projecting a $162,000 net income, about a $17,000 increase compared to what we had projected in the 21 budget. Management fees are projected to increase by $293,000. Most of that is attributed to increase in management fees from the Section 8 program as relates to the leasing percentage as well as the additional vouchers from the emergency housing vouchers. FSS program, we're projecting a shortfall of about $88,000. A little decrease from last year. I think last year was around $120,000 that was projected. that projected, that shortfall will be made up out of money received from the Housing Choice Voucher Program, as well as the Public Housing Program, where these participants live at as well. Our total agency budget is approximately $172 million for the upcoming fiscal year, and I'll entertain any questions if you might have any.
Thank you, Mr. Herron. I'll turn it over to the board for any questions regarding the proposed annual budget.
And if you don't have any now, if you want to contact me later, I'll be more than welcome to answer any question at a later date as well.
Well, we had a real thorough, as you indicated, we had a real
We did.
thorough discussion at our committee meeting, and I think we were able to cover all the different, kind of drilled a little bit deeper into each department or fund, and so thought that was a worthwhile presentation and exercise. I think that being conservative on the proration makes a lot of sense. We don't know, we're operating kind of in the dark with HUD, so being conservative on that makes a lot of sense. And if we get more proration allocation, then we have more dollars to work with to help our residents. So,
Exactly.
any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion by Commissioner Craig and a second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Thank you. Thank you to you and your team, Mr. Herron.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll go to that. That ends our items of discussion and action. We'll go to section 5, number 12, presentation from Procurement Manager Johnny Shaw on the Section 3 program. Mr. Shaw.
Good afternoon again. Just a little bit of introduction and background. The Section 3 program was formerly managed by the FSS department. It was transitioned to procurement late last year. I've only had a couple of webinars, and I'm anticipating going to some trainings to get more familiar with the new rule and all the parameters that are surrounded by the Section 3 program. To the right? Yes. The first slide defines the Section 3 resident. A resident public housing or Indian housing, resident of the metro area, non-metropolitan county in which the Section 3 covered assistance is expended, and a low income, 80% of medium, or very low income, 50% medium per person. Business concern. This is a Section 3 business that is 51% owned by a Section 3 resident, or has a permanent full-time staff comprised of 30% of Section 3 residents, or has 25% dollar amount of its subcontracts to Section 3 businesses. A Section 3 worker is basically a worker whose income is previously analyzed calendar year below the income limit that is established by HUD. This worker is employed by a Section 3 business concern, or the worker is a youth build participant. A targeted Section 3 worker is also a worker that is employed by a Section 3 business concern, a resident of public housing or Section 8 based housing, a resident of public housing projects, or Section 8 assisted housing managed by the PHA, or a youth build participant. We have bidding thresholds, preference thresholds for invitation for bids, and it's a running scale. You can see the numbers there, and the preference percentages on the right-hand side of the slide. And for request for proposals, the maximum points allowed, preference points allowed, is 15 points. The new rule, which took effect July 1st, 2021, the regulations are applicable to Section 3 projects for which assistance or funds are committed on or after July 1st, 2021. And of course, the regulation changed to 24 CFR 75 for the new Section 3 rule. Section 3 reporting. Previous reporting was done by new hires. Now the reporting scheme is labor hours. And the reason that HUD changed from new hires to labor hours, they felt that the candidates or applicants would have more sustained employment from the contractors versus hiring a person for a project. When the project's complete, then they let the person go. And so now they've changed the rule to report labor hours versus new hires. So the new rule is pretty aggressive, very aggressive. 25% or more of total labor hours worked. HUD is saying they want those to be Section 3 workers. 5% or more of the labor hours worked should be targeted Section 3 workers. So HUD has made the new rule nearly impossible to meet these benchmarks according to people familiar with this new rule. That also includes staff here at the agency. And so this new rule applies to the housing agency as well, which is why it makes it very difficult to meet these benchmarks. Last year, we reported capital fund had 1 new hire, and operating fund projects had 9 new hires. The current outreach methods that we use. So we include Section 3 documents that have to be acknowledged and signed for all solicitations that we do for the agency. I'm also part of all the pre-bids that we solicit out, explaining how Section 3 works and the requirements behind it. I also send quarterly emails to the contractors asking if they have positions available or training opportunities available for our residents. And I also send out job postings to all the property managers, and also through the FSS program. Questions?
Commissioner Craig.
I have a question on the, it says new Section 3 reporting, and you stated the total number of labor hours worked, and you stated there's a difference between new hires and labor hours. I don't understand what you mean by new hires. Oh, I apologize. I need to repeat it again.
Yes, please.
On new Section 3 reporting, the total number of labor hours worked, and then it has, you stated the difference between new hires or labor hours. I don't understand what you mean. I can't conceptualize what you're saying. Can you just give me an example, like detail me a picture so I can understand what you're talking about?
So are you, let's go to that slide so I can. Is it this slide here? Reporting?
Yes, that's it. Yes. This is, I don't understand the new hours and labor. I know the new hires,
Mm-hmm.
and I know what labor hours are,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't understand why there's a distinction.
Oh, between the two.
Yes.
And so basically, again, HUD, we used to report to HUD all new hires that we brought on board.